Okay, well I thought we could do another Ragnarök Cometh update and just have a look at how the X-ray flux is actually progressing, and also some of the environmental influences that we are now having to deal with, because there is quite a lot playing out on the physical. And so for people that follow Ragnarök Cometh, this is not just a video that addresses the science and the data. What we do with this information is we have an understanding for it on all the causal planes. And so when we see this X-ray flux and we see this exchange of energy between us and our star, we know that that is going to factor into our environment and also all of the causal influences that are in our environment. And so we've basically had the sun really starting to quieten down, almost flatlining, and I just love how the sun is doing this, because it's almost like we have a few good hits and then the sun will allow that to be processed in the external environment. It's almost like we're being tempered. So, as I said, in these videos we will look at how this energy plays out on all the causal planes, and we will look at the other factors on a macroscopic level, so we have a fuller understanding of all of these events that are taking place in space weather as well as on our planet. And this is because Ragnarök is comething. We are at the end of a cycle. This is why the sun is acting in a very unusual way that they have never observed before. This is why there's a lot of interest in this information now, and we have seen a lot of channels created because people were following this information. However, as I just said, my videos will not just be the science. So you will have to understand that we address the information for Ragnarök Cometh on all of those levels, including the esoteric. So we do have a full understanding. And so if you feel that the information discussed is somewhat beyond your understanding, you will find playlists where you can also seek the same understanding, because everything that we have discovered by piecing the story of mankind back together is basically based on sacred geometry and the Fibonacci sequence, and so it can all be related back to science. And so this is how, using that, we were able to put all of the pieces of the puzzle back together. To a degree, because we still don't have the full picture of who mankind are, but we do know that there is a divine race within mankind, and that mankind exists in the state of physicality and a state of an ethereal environment. And when we are back in the ethereal environment, which is what Ragnarök bringeth in, divine man is once again in his kingdom and his environment. And this is when we see a time of harmony, because we are at the beginning of the cycle and we haven't yet lost access to the light, because a lot of it has to do with the angles of light, which is why I say we have to look on the macrocosm as well, because the illumination comes from the macrocosm of mankind, and that just keeps continuing on infinitely. And so we have to have an understanding for the larger picture. Otherwise, if we do just look at the physical and only look at the solar activity and not account for anything else, any other environmental influences on a galactic level, then we're not going to have a full understanding of why we're experiencing all of these changes. So it is good to know when you are going to look at this information in these videos, at least the science of the ancients, which was Hermetics. Ancient Egyptian science. And Hermetics actually confirms itself with modern science because they have actually used parts of Hermetics for their own theories. And now all of the new breakthroughs in quantum physics and holographic universe theory can all be found within Hermetics. Now what the Kabbalion is just 3 initiates have understood the science and then they've interpreted that for mankind from what was left after Rome trashed all of our knowledge. And this is where I think there is this brotherhood that is for the good, that do also work under the surface and almost mirror the darker. And they are there releasing all of these Hermetic diagrams and the Tarot and the Kabbalion and the Kabbalah Tree of Life. And so we still have access to some of this information that was stolen from us. But this is the science of mankind and the universe, because even the Creator is governed by these laws. This is what children should be learning at school, but you will not find them learning about sacred geometry or Hermetics at school. They will keep them well away from this information, which is why it is always looked upon negatively. And those that have taken the spiritual path, so-called following Rome, have been told to fear this, fear the occult. So the truth within themselves is to be found in the occult, and who they are following down the path is telling them to stay away from the truth of themselves and just come and listen to us. So that's what Christians do. They just take their information of someone that tells them what to think. Listen to me. Whereas this information, you've got to learn the sciences and then you've got to apply it to all the other information to bring it together. And this is what I have done over the last nearly 4 years. And basically learnt all of the sciences from the beginning, because the institutions in which I was forced to partake in could not answer logically any questions for me on either side, science or religion, because that's what they did, separated them as well. So you have to understand, people that are into the science part, that you have to understand there's a spirituality to existence and to consciousness. And so you have to account for that. And people that are into the consciousness and spirituality side, you have to account for the data and for that side. And you have to bring them together. That's what a seeker does. That's what an initiate does. And that's what anybody that's listening to this information will have to do to really have a good understanding of it. Bring it all together. If not, you'll only really get a partial understanding, and really I wouldn't bother. Just go and get a news hit from somebody. But if you want to have a very good understanding of everything and enlighten yourself to who you are and to why we are experiencing these changes on our planet now, then look to this information and have an understanding for yourself and for creation. And so the first important things to know is that we do have planes of correspondence, and it all plays out on these 3 causal planes: the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. And we can also see this as within a soul, because we have the mental, which is the conscious part of the soul, the ba. We have the spiritual, which is the ethereal part of the soul, the ka. And then we have the physical manifestation of the soul in the material. But we can also see mankind playing out creation on those three levels as well. So we have to understand that they are the three levels that influence the experience of a soul in creation on those three planes, not just the one that science can prove to you, so they say with all of their theories. We have to account for the conscious and we have to account for the spiritual, and this is where we have a problem when we're in a very physical part of the cycle, because people have forgotten this part. The ethereal, the spiritual plane is basically the ethereal plane and the ethereal soul, which houses consciousness. So we can see consciousness as seated within the soul, and then the soul seated within the physical container, the physical body. And then we also see these three planes of influence in everything. So I will link this underneath, and I would suggest anyone that's very interested in understanding Ragnarök understand Hermetics, because this is also the science of the Norse people. The science of all the ancients is centered around these 7 basic principles in which we're all governed. So it is very good to know this when you are looking at the sciences on all of the causal levels. So let's have a look at what else has happened in our external environment. So to start with, let's have a look at the Schumann resonance. Seem to be having a little bit of a background energy felt there by Mother Earth. She seems to be feeling something. So this is what the Schumann resonance is. It's almost like Mother Earth's heartbeat. It's the background energy from Mother Earth. And there is something that is influencing a higher level of that energy. So that will be playing out as well on all of the causal planes. So I'll put this link underneath. This is a Russian site that watches this. We are losing a lot of NASA data, and be prepared for that too, guys, that we're going to slowly keep losing NASA data, okay? They will do it. They'll take it from us. Okay, Tongan volcano. Now this is the one that was making all the ocean turn red around the area that it was erupting in, and now it's an island. So thanks to that fisherman, because he's the one that found it, went and told them. I hope he had a cigar, because yes, we are now getting more activity on the Ring of Fire, and as I said, this is actually changing the atmosphere of our planet. And so even though down in the southern hemisphere we're now experiencing a lot of heat and a lot of, that was my dog, by the way, having a roll on the grass. We are having, now I've forgotten, he's made me forget, and I'm 13 minutes in. Oh, what was it? Bloody Oscar. Oh, damn it. Oh, okay, yes, this is what I wanted to say, because it's really humid here. Okay, really humid. I mean, I'm talking, it is so, I cannot have my fan. I have to have it on. I mean, if I had to exist without a fan, I would go insane. It's that humid and hot. And so while we're getting the heat down in the southern hemisphere, you guys are getting the cold up in the northern hemisphere. Okay? So what's happening with the volcanoes is that they are going to eventually cause the atmosphere to be blanketed and the temperatures to drop. So even the southern hemisphere will eventually find that it is starting to experience, on average, temperature drops because of all this volcanic activity. This is how the Ice Age is brought in, which, by the way, I've found this channel. This guy does a great update here on all of the activity regarding our cold snaps and all across the Middle East, and how it was just unprecedented. As he said, you know, it's happened not just this year but last year too, and then before that 100 and something years. So he does a really good report here. I've subbed him, and I'll put his link underneath as well. Human activity has pushed Earth beyond 4 of the 9 planetary boundaries, science warns. So they are in just total destruct mode, and they're telling us that they're destroying this planet, and we're doing nothing. And we'll continue to do nothing. We'll just discuss the information in this. And he even says, these are not problems of the future. These are urgent matters, rather urgent matters right now, and it's just not being addressed. People are still arguing about a carbon tax as though paying money to pollute is going to change anything, when the oceans are full of plastic and rubbish and all the animals are dying, and we've got all of these oil rigs pumping oil out of the ocean beds that are just leaking everywhere, and then spraying poisons onto the ocean to sink it to the bottom and killing all the marine life, and mankind is just allowing that to continue. So this will not be tolerated anymore. This is coming to an end, all of this negligence on the behalf of mortals who have not fulfilled their duty to Mother Earth, to look after her. Because poor Mother Earth's suffering terribly. And people that just think they can pay a carbon tax and that somehow, you know, you've done your bit. No. We are all responsible for this, and now they are showing us. And so this is, you know, 9 is the number of the hermit, you know. 9 is the path that you walk back to your crown. And they're saying we've hit 4 of them. So, yeah, pay attention to this, because they know how bad it really is. And I'm starting to realise how bad it really is. And I don't think we understand just how destructive they've been. I don't think it's just Fukushima that's leaking. I think they're all leaking, especially you guys over in the States. You really need to be careful with all of your nuke plants, because they haven't upgraded any of them. And this radiation actually will destroy the surrounding environment, because it's just a high level energy. Then they will have to update these reactors, and they just haven't. And so all of these leaks all get treated just by internal affairs. It never gets investigated by any, you know, outside governing body that can make sure the checks and balances are all in place. They're just investigating themselves. So just be aware of that. They are really, really on their way to destroy us as much as they can, because whatever they cannot inherit, they will destroy. That's basically their mindset. If we can't have it, fuck you, you can't have it either. We're just going to kill it. We'll kill everything, because we hate God. We hate everything God stands for. So we're just going to get rid of God, which is what science has done. And then we're just going to kill everything that God has made, which is what they're doing. And as I said, mankind's just standing there and kind of watching them. This is an iceberg that has flipped up in the Antarctic. And so even though they say it's something that is not particularly rare, you know, and they make this, yes, if you're seeing them photographing these types of icebergs and they haven't had the chance to photograph them before, they're rare. And so they're even saying the colour they have not seen. So anything that's happening at the poles like this, you have to really pay attention to, because it's showing us that there's changes going on. Big changes that aren't normal. And as I said, because of the charge now going through Mother Earth, that the Schumann resonance is also picking up, this is changing the structure of the ice crystals and just the magnetics and electrics of everything. It's all affected on all levels, and it's all been shown on, you know, all of these levels. So that's pretty much it. I did just want to actually show you this one because it does just again confirm that around 10,000 years ago there was a big event on Earth, and this is also corresponding to Ragnarök and to all of the other information about the cycle that we're in, and that halfway through the cycle we have a big cataclysm. Now, Graham Hancock has picked up on this, and I am surprised because he has identified that we do have this huge cataclysm that did involve all of these meteorites, which are on their way to us again, because this is just a continuing cycle, and as part of the end of the cycle, I'm sure we are probably going to expect more of these incoming meteorites and these incoming objects, and because they really are quite precious to the divine race, and so to me that shows a connection there too, and Iron Man, and so I would definitely be paying attention to that they were proven to have hit halfway through the cycle. And so, as I said, yeah, it's good to see that Graham Hancock has actually seen this, but I would actually really appreciate Graham Hancock expanding his understanding of the ancient man and their understanding of the cycle that we're in, the great year. He's actually only identifying the physical year. He needs to find the ethereal side of man. He needs to understand that mankind is in a precessional cycle of 26,000 years, and at the height of that cycle we build these absolutely magnificent civilizations, which I'm sure we don't even quite understand, because what we have left is what survived from the beginning of that cycle. And so for an understanding of that, he really needs to see all of the information. And I am quite surprised because Graham Hancock does speak a lot about the ancient Egyptians, and he does claim to have a lot of information about the ancient Egyptians, yet he doesn't actually use their science. So I find it unusual that he is perplexed about this race of people that have built these superior structures, but he doesn't want to understand this race of people's science so that he can understand how they built these structures. So yeah, if anyone wants to do Graham Hancock a favour, I would be linking him the Kabbalion and just saying, Graham, great year. Go and have a look. Because seriously, until all of these researchers are finding the great year and looking at that cycle of mankind, they're really not going to have an understanding for the ancients, because they will only ever see them as something in the past, something behind us, something to be studied, you know, something to be philosophized about but never really having a grasp of. And that's just not true, because we can have truth. We can have a grasp of who we are and the laws that govern us. It's just that we need to go and find our truth in multiple areas, and this is what seeking does, and this is what being initiate does, and also requires of you, requires of every soul, that you have to go and seek this for yourself, to be a seeker, to be an initiate, to be worthy of being a part in creation. That's what it takes. That's what Ragnarök takes. That's what it's going to take to survive Ragnarök and come through into the new cycle. So people can either just dismiss this information as just, yeah, you know, whatever, interesting, or that's crazy, or whatever, but to the others that have the mental eye open, or even just beginning to open, and are finding themselves on this video, then the tools are there for you to go seeking. It's completely up to you. And as I keep saying lately, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. We no longer have to be ignorant. We can actually go and seek an understanding for ourselves, but we have to go and do that ourselves. We can't just expect to have information given to us, which is how Rome has designed the system, and how we've always taken information as just someone telling us what to think, whereas this time we actually have to go and weigh and measure it ourselves on different information that we're given, different tools that we're given. It requires us to think. It requires us to intellectualise. It requires us to look at this information on a conscious level not just live life, just existing here as part of the false illusion that Rome has created, that people are just being led by the nose. That's basically, it's like Rome's got them by the nose, just leading them around in all different varying ways, because they've basically put a program down for everybody. So you've got to understand that program if you're going to understand Ragnarok and what cometh. So yeah, definitely Kabbalions, great place to start. Okay, well I'll leave it there for my Ragnarok cometh update. There's more I could cover, but really you just keep going, because the information just is so constant now. There's so many changes taking place on all of the causal planes, and because when you're identifying them all, you've got to report on them all, and really it's starting to accelerate. So I think we just hang on to our seats, buckle up, sunshine, try and inform yourself as much as you can, and hang on. Best we can do. Well, as I said, I'll link everything underneath, and as always, peace out.